Hello, everybody. We're now live. Thanks all for joining this LinkedIn live session of the FMCG guys. In this case today, FMCG guy, I would say, because it's only me, Ephraim couldn't make it, but accompanied by an old friend of the show, Andrew Pearl. Hi, Andrew. Thanks for joining.
Hi, Daniel. Thanks so much for inviting me again. Real pleasure to be with you as the FMCG guy.
Yeah, exactly. The other FMCG guy for the day. So Andrew, I know that. By the way, I just saw that we're getting an alert that now we are live. But I was just getting an alert here at StreamYard saying that LinkedIn was having problems to connect. But it said the green light came on saying we're now live. So if anyone missed it, I'll repeat myself. Daniel Torres here from the FMCG guys, joined by Andrew Pearl. Andrew Pearl is joining us from Profitero, where he is the Vice President of Industry Insights. He may be a familiar face because he participated on a podcast earlier this year. And he's here today to talk about their latest industry benchmark they've done about e-commerce. I'm probably not saying the right accurate word, so I'll let you, Andrew, maybe tell the audience a bit about yourself to get acquainted with you, and then we can talk about the Profitero a bit in the report.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel, and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining as well. Real pleasure to be back here again. So just in case you haven't heard of Profitero, we're with the world's leading digital analytics companies, and that effectively means we help our clients to sell more on the digital shelf. So we're monitoring about 900 retailers on a daily basis in areas like pricing, availability, search performance, product content, and also ratings and reviews. And also we help provide sales data for Amazon and sales and share in that way. So another area we focus a lot of time on is really talking with the industry and helping understand, what the benchmarks is. But I guess we'll come into that. But our main focus is helping our brands and our customers to sell more online.
Perfect. And what does BP Industry Insights mean exactly?
Yeah, it's one of those general terms, isn't it? I get the fun job of talking at events like this. Obviously, present a lot, but also really help understand, and as I mentioned, have those conversations with our clients across the globe, and really try to understand what are the key challenges that people are facing into, but also what are the opportunities from an e-commerce point of view. So, really trying to share those key insights across organizations. I work very closely with our CMO is based in Boston, Mike Black, who I'm sure many of you know is another prolific LinkedIner. So we work very closely together to really drive insights coming out of Profitero.
Perfect. So we called this session "How to Build a Winning E-commerce Team." It all came because I saw that you'd published as Profitero the 2022 e-commerce organizational benchmark study. What does this report mean? Well, how is it linked to talent?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it's an annual report. It's now in its 6th year, Daniel, and we're very, very proud of it. I think, as I said, we really want it to be getting the touch point of the industry from an e-commerce point of view. So it's based on feedback directly from e-commerce leaders. We send out the research every year. We had about 300 from across the globe, which is fantastic. And it's very much a global representation. It's around about sort of 50-50 with North America and then 50% with EMEA and APAC. It's also with organizations of all different sizes. And in terms of categories, it covers multiple different FMCG categories, health and beauty, food and beverage, home goods, and so on. And I think that in terms of the aim, it's very, very simple. It really just allows brands and manufacturers to benchmark themselves versus the industry and versus their region as well in some key areas like e-commerce organization and also their skills and capabilities that they're driving throughout their team. But also, I think really more than that, and we'll talk on hopefully a lot about the actions that come from it. It's not, we don't want it just to be a survey. We want it to drive action. It's about what does that mean for them in terms of how do you structure yourself for success going into 2023, particularly with all the headwinds and the challenges we're facing into at the moment. How do you drive better investment? And equally, I think one one particular focus area for this year, which is new for the report, is also about driving greater retailer collaboration. And I think, we think there's lots of opportunity there. So yeah, that's the main aim of it. I think what's really interesting is already just a few starting points is, when you start to understand where there are key differences, and obviously been looking back over the data, I've got the benefit looking back over the last 6 years. If we took at FMCG categories, I think food and beverage has historically been one that's actually been a little bit behind in terms of management of the digital shelf, like brands catching up in terms of driving great content, really focusing on ratings and reviews. But now from our research, actually this year, food and beverage companies see themselves as some of the most advanced and leaders. And I think that's reflective of everything that's gone over these last 2 crazy years. COVID has forced everyone to really drive excellence execution on the digital shelf. So now everyone's focusing on content, everyone's doing that. So they are the leaders. And also, I think it's also really interesting to look at the kind of things that they're facing into. Now, every year, it's been consistent. The biggest challenge that brands are facing into is always pricing and profitability. It's no great surprise when it comes to e-commerce. We all know it's not a profitable channel, particularly for the retailers. But I think, again, what's interesting to see what's different this year, and what's really grown is brands now are spending more and more time just trying to understand and report e-commerce as a distribution channel in itself, and making sure that they can link in the same way they do bricks and mortar sales. How can I make sure that I'm monitoring the right KPIs on the digital shelf? How can I make sure I'm linking what I do to an increase in sales? So yeah, lots of interesting points to look at, really.
Yeah, I can imagine the difference of the report or the conclusions that you got, or people's expectations of 6 years ago versus now. It must be like crazy different, no?
Oh, completely, absolutely. I mean, I've been at Profitero now actually for nearly 6 years. So I joined just after the first report was released. And actually, in my first and second years, I was sent out to. I actually spoke to a CEO at a global manufacturer, really because our contact, who is the e-commerce leader, was saying, look, we need to get that buy-in from the C-suite level as to why should we focus on e-commerce? Why should we give Amazon, for example, its own P&L? All these and it seems crazy now, but that was the fact. Now, and this is one of the key points, I think, now that top-down sort of buy-in is almost a given, and actually it's gone the other way. So we're on a weekly basis and monthly at minimum. We know all of our clients, they tell us their C-suite is demanding. Firstly, you've got to have a very clear set of KPIs in place and a really clear scorecard. But C-suite is demanding that. They want to know, how am I doing versus the competition in terms of my presence. So great. So yeah, lots of changes. And I have to say most of them positive as well.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. By the way, to the audience, forgot to mention before, if you guys have any questions, we'll probably do some I think we'll do some Q&A at the end if there are questions. But you can start writing them up as they come to your mind, and we can tackle them, or at the end, or if it's relevant to what we're talking to, I can look at them as well and ask them to Andrew. Or if you have any questions for me, feel free to ask as well. I'm open to answer. So in terms of the report, what's the main conclusion of the report? Because I know there's like one main conclusion.
Yeah, absolutely. The main conclusion, Daniel, is really, the headline is that e-commerce is continuing to be democratized, and that's it. So what does that mean? Well, it's really about, I guess, moving it from a very much a specific capability that is managed by a select few people. Typically you look at those e-commerce centers of excellence that are still very much part and will continue to be part, but actually it's being shared, it's being democratized through many sort of wider groups. And really very much more is now moving out. And we looked at different sort of organization types, and I guess we sort of group it into 3 key areas. The I guess typically as you start your e-commerce maturity, you're more likely to have it's like an embedded team where you have sort of one line of reporting of e-commerce, and it's like a unique team on its own, and they do everything, they manage everything, and you know, if there's any e-commerce questions, they're drafted in to talk to a retailer or you know, into a brand question, and that then emerges slightly more to what we call the sidecar model, and this is all in the report, by the way, so this will be brought to light much more visually. But yeah, this sidecar model where actually within e-commerce teams, you actually then get specific experts. And we're seeing this more and more. You know, teams now have to have experts in content. And absolutely, the biggest change this year has been experts in media as well. So
for example, you mean within the media organization that's that's like agnostic in terms of channel, you have to have somebody specifically doing e-commerce?
Digital media, yeah, absolutely, because it's
digital media.
Digital, yeah, completely, because it's one of the areas that we're seeing investment in this area just exploding across all markets. You know, the retailers themselves are falling over themselves almost to become media agencies in their own right. You know, they're using it's very much an income stream now for them. So yes, that kind of expertise is absolutely vital. So that's the kind of the evolution. I think where we're seeing and some of the biggest changes is actually what we call this democratized model, so that actually now e-commerce is spread. So it's not just one e-commerce team. You actually have members of the sales team, marketing team, finance, all of them, and particularly a lot of them maybe have got their focus on a more bricks and mortar retailer, but actually now e-commerce is becoming part of it. So that's great. It's being spread throughout the organization. It does bring about its challenges because you're getting people who are perhaps never really dealt with e-commerce before. There's a lot of jargon, as we all know. There's a lot of three-letter acronyms and everything, and above the page, below the page, A+ content, all these things. What do they mean? So a lot of people now be exposed to it, and that does bring about some challenges. But I think it does. One thing we're seeing is very much resulting in these changing of structures, and it's also, I think what's very interesting is that in some sense. So again, we look year on year now. Those first two models that I mentioned, the embedded and the sidecar, they've actually reduced slightly. So they're around about, but 50% for embedded and about 25%. So, but the fastest growing is that democratized model. Now, growth is still being a little bit slow, but actually a lot of that, of course, we're still facing into COVID even now. We've got the most drastic economic headwinds we've faced into for years. But I think over as hopefully we all get out into recovery in the next 12, 18 months, whenever it is, we think it's not going to continue the democratization, but it's going to accelerate. And again, retailers are driving that because they themselves are creating their own sort of omni-channel buying groups, and they are upskilling their buyers. They have that expectation that you'll come to them not just as a talking e-commerce, but you talk about it as in the overall approach. And I think what's really interesting finally on this point is that we're seeing that actually the vast majority, so 77% of all leaders in e-commerce are now including e-commerce in some kind of discussion within joint business planning. We can dive into that a little bit more detail, but it's being involved. It's great. What's interesting is how to what exact level, but it's more now than ever, it's being included at those highest level conversations with retailers.
Yeah. And when you think of like best in class organizations in FMCG having this democratized model, I mean, is there like a type of skeleton that we can outline of what it looks like?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and we talked a lot about kind of really what needs to be in place for you to be able to transition to it, because there is in some ways there can be a danger that you can move too quickly, and just to be clear as well, we're absolutely not saying that the only way that you can have success is if you're democratizing e-commerce throughout the organization. You're getting everyone using digital shelf data. That's
it's more like a trend. We don't really know if it will be successful or not, and it's up to some degree.
Exactly, and it very much differs. I had a great conversation actually this morning with Neil Darragh, who heads up e-commerce for Europe for Colgate Palmolive, and he raised a great point. Is that within obviously he heads up across Europe, within different markets, you'll have different markets at different levels. Now, part of that is driven by the retailers, by their capabilities, but also perhaps where in certain markets Amazon has much greater stronghold. Obviously in grocery and FMCG, perhaps less so in Europe, but where other pure players are, for example, are growing significantly. You look at the pet industry where pure players, Zooplus, so many others are growing very quickly. So that it depends on that, and there's no one set model saying that it is perfect, but it's about working with each local market and understanding what's right for them. But I think again, from the leaders we spoke to, they were said actually there is a danger that if you push too quickly, the worst thing to do is to push a market to be democratic. So make your sales teams, your marketing teams get involved if they're not ready for it. And I think the two things that need to be in place. Firstly is of course training, which goes without saying. The good news is from our survey, about 50% of leaders are using training to really drive that understanding. And as I say, a lot of that is about the jargon on e-commerce, really helping them understand what it means. What are the key drivers? Because we all understand, it's in store, it's about getting off-shelf display. It's about getting a gondola end, whatever. In e-commerce, you have algorithms that change search results minute by minute, and it's there are so many things that go. Everything on the digital shelves is interrelated. So yes, it's about education, but that in itself isn't enough. I think you've really, as leaders, you really need to embed the e-commerce into everyday working of everyone in your teams. So and that comes from maybe having very prescriptive playbooks, because I think one thing we see a lot, and your question going back to about what do best companies do, well, I think particularly the ones where they are gradually spreading it out, there's, as I mentioned already, there's a lot of people who are experiencing e-commerce for the first time and they don't understand it. So making it very, very clear, but also being very prescriptive of what the actions are that they need to take on areas like availability, content, or search, and who the owners are. Because there is a danger. There are now more and more teams getting involved. 1,000,001 things you can do on the digital shelf. No one takes ownership, and end up wasting time. So that's I think
that's a question that was coming to mind actually. How do you what's the governance model? No, because before it was a bit of a marginal channel, and then you had like a global director or VP of e-commerce doing the strategy, and then one person or two per market doing the execution on Amazon or other players. I think that now it's a completely different story, like with the boom of the digital shelf, retail media, etc. So who's coordinating all these efforts, or is it chaos?
Yes, generally not. I'm pleased to say no, and it comes back to this point because there's a danger you look at this and that you over amplify the message that we're saying about democratization. We're not saying that everyone should move to this model. And certainly, if you are a multi-market organization, centers of excellence will always have a key part to play. And that is about driving training. It's also another thing is about driving engagement right from the very top down. And as I mentioned, yes, that has improved significantly going back 6 years when, I had to persuade a CEO why they should invest in Amazon. Now that's kind of given, but it's got to come right from the top down. And when it does, you really see a big difference, because of course, if your CEO is pushing it and understanding it and forcing everyone onto it, then that drives engagement. And I think the final thing as well is about actually getting e-commerce KPIs into individuals' objectives and also bonus plans. And that's not just e-commerce people. That's everyone. So that's marketing, that's sales, that's supply chain, finance. And the ones that do, and I've seen this many times from experience, is they get very interested very quickly in e-commerce measures. So if they are targeted at a group level of saying, we want our share of search, say, for example, to be X, as long as they can directly influence it and they see their score going down for whatever reason, they could very quickly become interested. So there's no better way to drive understanding and engagement within e-commerce than to get people targeted on it. Now, as I say, the most important thing is that you don't force it on. It's not, number one is that people understand the measures that they do. So that's why training is so important, first of all. And you embed the understanding, you embed the actions, you really drive clear owners. But once everyone's clear what they need to do, give them the targets, and then incentivize them to do it. And I think the final thing as well, another key manufacturers we see doing really well is having very clear KPIs across markets. Mm-hmm. Now, again, just start off with a caveat. As what you shouldn't do is just say, right, everyone is going to have this set of measures, because for some markets, if we focus on EMEA, some of them, the larger markets, UK, Germany, France, fine, they could probably achieve it. Spain, Italy, and so on. For some of the smaller markets where e-commerce is still growing and perhaps the retailer capability is still growing as well, they just can't simply achieve them. So you've got to have KPIs that are achievable and ones they can influence. But if you do that again, you can drive. So I'll give you a specific example. So content. Everyone should have a content that you are achieving the right benchmark for number of images, presence of video if it's relevant, length of title, all these really simple measures. What those measures are will be different market by market. In some it will be 8 images, in some it will be 2. It differs retailer, but having that common overall measure, and then by doing that, and systems like Profitero and others will then allow you to give that a score, so you can see how you're performing. Honestly, I've seen it; it's fantastic. I've been on presentations with certain markets where we're working with multiple markets, and say, how's the other market doing? Is our score better than them? And when you tell them, yeah, you're leading, it's like, that's great. And it's another real motivational thing. So driving the right KPIs, setting them across markets, getting that sort of friendly competition going, and sharing best practice is another great way of helping yourself to move towards this democratization model.
Yeah. When talking about democratization, as you said, it's not depends on where you are. You will want to get to one stage or the other. But according to the people that you've spoken with, what needs to be in place? What are the fundamentals that need to be in place before you evolve and you bring e-commerce to the whole organization virtually, or e-commerce?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, as I say, it is the number one is the understanding and the training, and really driving that through. But it's having that the clear KPIs in place. I think they are number one, and really driving that so that individuals can influence directly, but also being very, very clear as to who those owners are. So it's something that I think if you move too quickly, then people just don't understand it. And as I say, there is a big risk, and I have seen this many times where you general task about we want to improve particular areas of the digital shelf, like content, but people don't understand it, and then you actually waste your investment. You waste people's time because they're trying things that are never going to really move the needle. And so, being very prescriptive.
Why?
Just because on digital shelf, there are so many things you can do that, like I said, some of the things that affect search results. It could be your content, it could be your title, your description, it could be how many reviews you got, it could be your availability. That can obviously affect all these kind of things. So there are so many areas, and if your organization isn't connected and really working together on that, you can spend a lot of money driving best in class content, get it up on the retailer website, it looks fantastic. But if ultimately your supply chain isn't really bought into the different ordering patterns that you see online, you're going to waste that investment, because your products will disappear. On many websites, they remove access to the product page directly. So you spent loads of money getting best-in-class content. One side of the business is happy, they've achieved their objectives, whereas the other side has failed abysmally, and it's ruined it for everyone. Now,
wow. So it's interesting, because this is really I think with this example, you see really like what democratizing means, no? Because it means that everybody along your value chain needs to be on board with it. No?
Yeah, completely. And I think that the driver behind that, and I say this because I've been in data all my life, but data, as always, has to be a key driver of that.
Okay.
And I think again, that's where we're seeing a continued improvement. So again, going back right at the very beginning, having an understanding of the digital shelf was relatively low. You're talking very early on, sort of single figures. Now it's been some of the fastest growing areas. At least sort of 60% of leaders have some form of digital shelf analytics. But more than that, it's not just about having the data. We all have far too much data. I know that from my experience at Profitero. I worked over 15 years actually on the brand side in category management. So I know there's far too much data already. But they're actually, what brands are doing is really driving understanding of causal analytics. So linking sales data to digital shelf. And that's where you can but if you do that, you can avoid your teams wasting their time. So, for example, if you do change your content, or if you do carry out a sponsorship campaign on, for search to improve, particularly when you launch new products, it's really important you don't just look at the digital shelf features in the isolation. Am I getting good share of page? Yeah, great. Am I getting good reviews? Well, that's good. That's all positive. That helps. But fundamentally, if you aren't really seeing how is that driving my sales, is that increasing my share, then again you're kind of running blind. So yes, it's really important, and it's great to see. We actually saw one of the biggest jumps is in brands, manufacturers who are doing this, linking e-commerce sales data with digital shelf. It's still tough. Some of the global data providers like IRI, they are increasingly sharing e-commerce data now. So it's getting, which is good. So you can now link e-commerce data directly to digital shelf measures. And in fact, we launched a partnership this year, so we are now providing our data to IRI, so you can directly link that. So wow. So within your IRI data, you can see those impacts. So I think that's hugely important. Again, that's the final thing that really needs to be in place. If you don't have the right data, the right understanding, and the ability to really understand what's driving your performance, you're much more likely to waste time. And this movement towards democratization won't be the right thing for you, because you won't be encouraging your teams to act on the right behavior. You've got to have that in place first to understand what are the key drivers, so that you can be very clear with your teams and they can focus on those few things that really work.
Got it. Yeah, interesting. It's a lot of work, isn't it? It's not. Sometimes it seems like, until now, I feel like it was all about like getting your product online, and now it's like the level of sophistication that we've seen in a very short amount of time, at least from the way I perceive it, is pretty impressive. I don't know if it's on my feeling only.
No.
Great for you guys, by the way.
Sorry, that.
No, that it's great for people like Profitero that really like just so much data and so many factors for a company that's not digital first, to really like, it's just such a change of paradigm that
it absolutely is, but it is driving that greater understanding. And as I say, I think there's, we're always constantly thinking about what's the future, and so yes, now is about pretty much, most brands have some form of digital shelf monitoring, which is great, and again, it's really important that you get the right level for your organization, because as much as I'd like to say everyone should buy this kind of the gold standard, actually sometimes you just need to have the right level of data that you can manage and deal with, and that's hugely important. But I think we look beyond that, and increasingly where digital shelf analytics, we as an industry continue to have to evolve. So we're not just focusing now on providing the data. We're looking, okay, how can we help brands understand what is the next best action they should take? So it's more than saying you're out of stock. Okay, you're out of stock, and therefore you should stop stop this media campaign. So, we're driving partnerships with agencies such as Sky and PatView, so that you can set up rules that if certain items or occurrences on the digital shelf, like you going out of stock, then that automatically stops your media campaigns. Equally, if say one of your competitors goes out of stock, well, that's great, and then you can start really conquesting their products and start sponsoring media or sponsoring keywords that are related to that. So this is where I think, it's evolved massively, but it's still got a lot more to do, because still at the moment, too many brands, it's just a data source. Our focus and we hope where the industry is going is really moving to that next stage of automation. And so ultimately, it's not that you just have one person in each market just kind of looking at Profitero recommends this and pushing the button, but they're not having to spend they're not having to invest in teams to look at the data. They're just really working with teams to spend more time with their customers and really drive influence that way. And I think that is key. If we as an industry can achieve that, spend less time looking at the data, more time working with the retail customers and working collaboratively with them, well, that's going to drive huge opportunities, I think, going forward.
Yeah. So when you talk to your clients in FMCG, what are the key actions that you recommend brands to take in e-com in 2023?
Yeah. So I think the first thing is what I've discussed already. Yes, drive training. Yes, make sure you've got that top-down approach. Fundamentally, if they're not in place first, you really don't. That's got to be the first starting point. Making sure you're driving that engagement right from the very top down and people understand it. But I think where we see a big opportunity, and as I mentioned, it's a new area for the report this year, is about driving much greater retailer collaboration in e-commerce. So as one thing that's great is, as I mentioned, the vast majority, 77% of all leaders are now including e-commerce in some way within joint business planning, which is great. But actually, if you dive down a little bit deeper, then it's not quite as good as it looks. So round about half that number actually are only doing it kind of as almost a bit of a one-off, and like, okay, let's bring out the shiny star e-commerce, mention it, but then for the rest of the year, you're not really focusing on it. And actually, it's only the top. Well, it's 14%, but it's almost just that top 10% who really are the leaders in the industry. They're the ones who are really driving things, demanding kind of specific budgets, specific plans within their joint business plans for the year. Now, again, I know there is a danger to this. Particularly where I've spoken with many leaders where you don't want to tie too much investment down, obviously, in JBPs, particularly around retail media, because the expectations year on year from retailers is that will go up and up and up. But one thing I think you can drive is greater collaboration, and I think we looked in our survey of where brands are collaborating well with retailers. The number one by far was on better content, and that's as I say, that's where there's been huge evolution, and particularly in food and beverage. I think going back 2 years ago, there was no way you would say that looking at content, it was pretty awful. Most brands were just one image, a very flat image, no sort of lifestyle shots, no serving suggestions, no real inspiration, no education. That's all changed, and COVID has played a large part in that. So that's driving it. But that's what most brands are doing. 72% of all brands are focusing or collaborating with retailers in some way on content. But where we looked at actually where there is opportunities, I think there were two areas. The first is in e-commerce first or e-commerce only assortments. So only 1 in 4 leaders that we spoke to are actually doing anything with this. And what I mean by that is and I appreciate, again, this is not, when you're talking about the bricks and mortar retailers, it's very difficult to do. This is perhaps more, we're focusing on more the marketplaces, the pure players like Amazon, but you're introducing ranges that are purely designed for e-commerce, designed for the greater profitability challenges, the packaging challenges, all those kind of things. So only 1 in 4 leaders are doing it at the moment. We think there's a huge opportunity to focus on that into next year. Because if you do that, it's not only you're keeping the retailer happy because you're developing packaging that is more sustainable. It will flow through better and more easier through their distribution system. It's helping their profitability. It will help you. So that's great. But it's also what the shoppers need. You know, obviously shoppers are looking increasingly for more sustainable products. They're looking for reduced cardboard, reduced packaging, all these kind of things. And the final thing, and again, you know, I talking with Neil again from Colgate this morning. He said, well, I shared an example of there's a lovely toy on Amazon. It's a fire engine, and the external packaging. If you turn it inside out, it then becomes a fire station and actually a storage unit. So fantastic! You've got almost like, you know, two toys in one. You've got a storage unit, you've got a little plate. And that's great. If you're selling toothpaste, you can't really do packaging that flips inside out as much as perhaps kids would love it. But you know, within toothpaste or grocery items, it's all about what is the shopper looking for, and in a lot of cases in e-commerce it's looking about driving value. So perhaps bigger packs, better value. We're seeing increase in usage of or purchases of bigger packs online, obviously, and so it's that kind of thing. It's not all about just packaging. It's making sure it's right for the retailer and for the shopper.
Yeah. Well, ultimately, I think it's about, I'm going to say something very obvious, but it's about being customer centric, not really getting into the online customer's mind and say, what will they be expecting from me? No, and also making it easy for them to find the product and buy the range that they're looking for. No.
Absolutely. I mean, you nailed it, Daniel. They will always be the fundamentals of success on the digital shelf. Make it available, make it easy to find, and make it convincing. You know, give me a reason why I should convert. So they're great content, ratings, and reviews. And I think a second area actually we saw where there was another opportunity for brands next year is really taking an e-commerce approach to category management. Now, I've had a lot of conversations with various leaders over these last few weeks and months. It's a real hot topic. Everyone's trying to get into it, understand it, because again, it's going back to my heart. I was in and headed up category management teams in brands like, or manufacturers like McCormick and Mars and Tetley Tea, and that was using data, dare I say it, point of sale data that was, you know, generally about a month old. You know, the in-store data obviously is quite historic. With e-commerce, with digital shelf data, it's daily. You know, if you log into Profitero this morning, you look at today's data, that generally is today's pricing, today's content, today's all those kind of things. So it's a new mindset. And as I said, the old in-store e-commerce, category management view is you've got your range view maybe once a year, and you've got to nail that and work with the buyer to get your best positioning. In search, you've probably got 10, 15 different phrases or terms that shoppers are using to find your products, and everyone can be different and everyone is dynamic, some more than others. We know some of the grocery retailers are less dynamic, but even still, you know, there's so many influences. So you've got to learn, and actually only 1 in 4 again leaders are running specific e-commerce projects. So this might be working with retailers on helping them drive the right menu, or the taxonomy is the phrase I'm sure many people know, so that if you're searching through the retailer menu bar, that you understand it, and you do that from a shopper point of view. So going back to what you said, it's about applying the same excellence and in-store education to online and approaching it from an e-commerce point of view. Only 1 in 4 doing it. I think there's a great opportunity. And actually, it's not just, dare I say it, the Colgates of this world. E-commerce is a much more level playing field, because you to sponsor keywords costs maybe a few €100, pounds, dollars, whatever it is, rather than buying a gondola end, which is hundreds of thousands. So small brands can and regularly do win online, and they can also bring their expertise and knowledge through the digital shelf to work with retailers. So we often see actually some smaller, nimbler brands have a much bigger influence online, and particularly from a category point of view, than perhaps sometimes some of the larger manufacturers who are a little bit slower to adapt to the e-com model from the usual bricks and mortar, which still provides the vast majority of their sales.
Yeah. We're talking here about like big companies, like you've mentioned Colgate a couple of times, and then when we talk about nimbler, smaller companies, I think that probably a lot of people will think about digital first type of companies. What about, I don't know if that's covered in the survey that you've done. What about these mid-range companies, let's say the ones that are between 100 and a billion, which don't have they have like a traditional route to market, but maybe they don't have the capacity to democratize like a big one?
No,
I don't know. Yeah.
Absolutely, it's a great question, and of course, that the democratized model is absolutely or generally the wrong thing to do, because I think typically what we see for those kind of organizations is that they will have an e-commerce expert who focuses on, so it's almost this kind of, it is this unique, but often it is one person. If they're lucky, it might be two or three, but it is that, and that's the right thing for them, because they also you can't do too much. So they hopefully will have prioritized which of the retailers they're going to focus on. They're not trying to do everything. Typically, a lot of them, obviously, depending on your category, and for grocery, perhaps less so, but some of them, Amazon might be a first point of call. So you need, as I say, to have an Amazon expert. So I think they're very much more at these early stages of still not sharing it out, but still going down the expert route, and that's absolutely fine, and that works for them. And we see that happening time and time again, because they focus on a relatively small number of retailers and categories. They can react, and they're not trying to spread their investment too thinly. As I said already, investment in e-com is for areas like sponsorship doesn't have to be expensive. Content, of course, can be more expensive, but brands, it's not the same as developing a whole new packaging and printing it out and putting it online. Actually, it's a few great quality photos, images, and getting those right. Yeah, that's going to cost a bit. It's not in by any way. So by having the right expert and not going down to optimized model, that for me is the key to success. It's about really so that you can be very specific on where you want to win. And then, of course, as you grow, start to get more people involved. But again, very much the danger here for those organizations that they move too quickly and they move away from the experts. So you have people who really have no clue of e-commerce, and they lose that ability to react quickly.
Yeah. Could there be a case, like in general terms, to say that in the future, like I've been saying, and a lot of people have said to me as well, that, for example, digital marketing per se would disappear. No, because digital would just be completely embedded in marketing. But interested as a headhunter as well, would you say that probably the talents that will be highly rated or already are, but in 2 years for sure, will be those that are like generalists, but that have had contact with e-commerce, like salesperson that has managed an e-commerce account, finance person that's business partnered with e-commerce, same with HR.
Yeah, absolutely, Daniel. And I think that that is another positive thing, that, and again, for certain organizations where they're ready to do it, where it's actually helping drive that democratization, because it is a great career driver. It's a great thing to say. It is absolutely important. There will, of course, continue to be experts, and look, it's still 2/3 of all organizations, as I say, aren't following the democratized model. So it's going to be a long time, years and years, until we really move towards that. And who knows, maybe we won't ever get to the kind of point where democratizes, or it'll be a long time until it's in the majority. But yes, I think increasingly it is vital. It's about having the experience of both. Of course, for now, experts are hugely on demand and will continue to be so. But you're right. I think you look at kind of internet marketing in general. When that first came about, it was seen as specific. Now it's just kind of marketing, and digital media will be absorbed, and you're absolutely right, become part of the general thing. So having that experience and the true kind of omni-channel experience will be very much sought after. Now, the only caveat I would say to this is, like, it's a very dangerous thing to have a crystal ball in e-commerce and really understand. Social commerce is becoming a huge driver, and so that again will need experts. Obviously, there's been vast talk over the what other areas like voice commerce, which is still kind of hanging around. Other areas like AI and driving visual search and all these kind of things. There will continue to be evolutions, which means that you'll need to have specialists in those new areas. But again, it's just that continuous cycle. You'll find there'll be something new, the next big thing. You'll need specialists for a short time, and then they'll just be absorbed in the overall group. So it will continue to evolve. So if you are wanting to get into e-commerce, it's still a great area to be. There will always be something new, something shiny to work on and to develop new skills in. And that's the great thing. It's certainly never dull. That's certainly true.
Yeah, definitely. I'm actually excited to see what the next stage for physical commerce in this new world. But that's of course that's probably for a whole other episode, right? I just wanted to ask you if this, and I know that this is catching you off guard, but if you have anything top of mind, any other like data points from the survey that you think are surprising, at least, like for example the fact that only 1 of 4 leaders are doing e-commerce only products, or that 40% of the companies are putting e-com in the JBPs. If there's anything that surprised you, not necessarily with a number, but any findings that you think are gonna be unexpected.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's really interesting. I think one of the key ones I mentioned already was like I think it's only 10%, 1 in 10 of organizations have actually achieved that thing I mentioned about driving specific KPIs across the organization, and that's really low, I think. Now I know it is very, very tough, but I really sincerely hope over the coming years that will increase. I think as well, another area was really understanding about what's improved and what's got a lot easier. And I think what was interesting, you'd think in these challenging times, is that with investment, we know, of course, these brands are everywhere. Everyone having budget cuts. There are sell more with lower budgets. It's becoming more and more difficult. But actually, what we saw is that from an e-commerce point of view, leaders have found it easier this year than ever to get more headcount or driving more incremental budget as well. So actually, leaders were 10% less likely to say that was a major challenge to get more headcount, and 20% less likely to say budgets is a significant challenge. So it's a fascinating one, even despite all of the challenges that we're going through. E-commerce is still the biggest driver. There is still the understanding, and just going back to your previous point, of course, yes, in-store will continue to change. For most categories, it will always be the biggest seller for decades to come, but the influence online will continue to grow. Forrester have continued to show one of the best industry benchmarks of how much of offline sales are influenced in some way digitally. So it's around about 60% now, but they've actually upweighted their latest forecast. So they think that by 2027, it will be about 70% of all sales will be influenced in some way digitally. So, it's becoming more important. And I think one other area, we kind of touched on it earlier, but media, I think, is the big winner. Media is absolutely the big winner this year. So we saw 71% of e-commerce leaders now have dedicated digital media roles in place. So if you're not one of those, then really, that's a key driver. You've got to, this area, because it is so complex, it's growing so fast. Retailer demands are growing quickly, and it is still very difficult to get a true understanding of the ROI. You've got to have experts in it. And that 71% had actually increased by 25% year on year. So it's the fastest growing headcount area that we've seen. And really, it's no surprise. It just reflects what all leaders have been telling us for a long time, that media is a bit of the Wild West. They're getting demands to pay more for it. They are paying more for it because they're seeing some kind of benefit, but they can't really prove what it is. So having that dedicated expertise in place is helping them do that, working with data providers to really understand the ROI. So I think a couple of really interesting points that have come out this year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. By the way, to the audience, we're gonna go to the conclusions now. If you have any questions, this is the moment to ask them. So we're gonna go with the conclusions. Maybe we've covered everything, and there's no questions from the audience. But Andrew, as a final summary, what are the final conclusions that you extract from this report?
Yeah, so I think I summarize it three key things, Daniel. Always try to keep it three simple points. Firstly, yeah, I've talked a lot about democratization, and it's happening. It's continuing, and it is driving a lot of success. However, it's got to be done at the right pace for you. It's not the right model for everyone, and it doesn't mean it's the only way to success. I think where we're seeing some of the fastest growth is through that and sharing it throughout the organization. But those things we talked about earlier, having those right conditions in place, like training, like top-down support, is all important. So that's number one. I think the embedding e-com skills within the organization is a vital constituent of that, as I mentioned, having it, and yet it's still relatively very, very few. Only 10% really of e-commerce leaders have that. So I think that's a big opportunity. Now, I appreciate it's very, very difficult to do, and the danger is if you do it too quickly and do it the wrong way. But genuinely, as I said, through driving friendly competition across markets and driving engagement in an understanding of it, there is no better way than embedding it in people's objectives and incentive plans. And finally, as I said, I think really within e-commerce, driving retailer collaboration is one of the greatest ways of encouraging more opportunity in 2023. Now, part of yes, that may be through e-com first or e-com only assortments. Obviously, difficult if FMCG and focus purely on bricks and mortar. But if Amazon, certain categories, spirits, wines and spirits, beers, wines and spirits, we know it's huge category for Amazon. A lot of focus there, and yet brands aren't really doing that. And driving that e-Catman approach. It's not just for the big players. I think brands have also, if you have the right data, you have the right insight, you understand your category, you can bring an insight and actively encourage brands to do that, because there's still a lot to be done on retailer websites. The experience is still, it's improved a lot. I think it can improve a lot more. Still on some retailers, I won't name them directly, but the search element is tricky at best, and sometimes you get very weird results coming up, and a lot of that is just because it's not set up in the right way. They haven't got the right insight to really drive how they should help the shopper find products. And so if you're a brand that knows what to do, talk to your retailer, and I think it will drive not just obviously improvement for you, but obviously help drive the category growth, which is what everyone wants to achieve at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I can only say very excited to see what happens in this next year. It will be interesting. I mean, and we'll probably talk again during this year, Andrew. But I think we must definitely meet in a year from now to go over the 7th report and see where we are then. Because of course, as you were pointing, this is the current trend, but there's no guarantee that it will be a linear. I mean, there's probably no guarantee at all that it will be linear, right?
No, absolutely, and I'd love to do that, Daniel. And I mean, look, go back 2 years. Clearly, no one predicted that.
2 years. It was 2020. We were already.
2020, sorry, yes. So
3 years already.
3 years already. Yeah, the devastating impact of COVID and the impact that's had on e-commerce. Let's all hope nothing of like that is around the way, but let's hope it's more positive. But you just never know. So it's going to be fun to see what happens.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thanks for joining, Andrew. This conversation will later be available on YouTube, which is our new channel, and on the podcast. So thanks for joining again.
Not at all. Thanks for the invite. Thanks very much, Daniel.